my name is Artsy, sister, and we're reading Saturnastra Melina. This is chapter 28, Titan with the Orcs. While Byron saw the elves, Melina had apparently gone and recruited the Nagas and the mermaid. The Nagas were 8 men, and their race had suddenly crept up over the last 200 years. Those with prodigious lifespan like the elves, dwarves, and nymphs still remember the Nagas back when they were just mindless monkeys, and they knew that their sudden awakening of consciousness was just unnatural. Among the human circles, they assumed that the Nagas had come from a different continent, and there have always been legends of the outside world and strange people that live there, and it wasn't impossible for them to find their way to the continent of Bersamen. The Nagas were hard to negotiate with, and they took on matters with a light-hearted nature. However, in battle they were beasts. Like the feral dragon, they seemed to have a sixth sense of danger, and they could smell an ambush from a mile away. In this respect alone, they were more useful than the typical ground soldier. The mermaids were another bizarre group. A large number of them had to spend their time at the sea for long periods of time, and only the groups, the zombie and the cutthroat, spent considerable time in freshwater places, and both made their money through privateering and trade. However, the cutthroats had preferred not to wander off from their native home, and their more fixed nature made them targets for bandits and other humans, and it was rare to see them so enthusiastic about going to war. It was said that the mermaids had a fish-like form in the ocean, and aside from their eyes and faces, most of the mermaids could pass for regular humans, and the zombies had large round eyes with a vertical slit pupil, and when it dilated, it turned round like human eyes, and the color varied from brown, silver, or yellow. Their teeth were razor sharp, and the top of the skin was ashen brown, and at the bottom white. And as for the cutthroats, they all look alike, even males and females, and they had the same white eyes and round pupils, and their teeth were small and sharp, and the frame had heavy spotting from top to bottom. The nest was a deep red color. For the time being, the giants and the dwarves were refusing to see Melina and her allies, and as a result, Melina invited a representative of the last Orc tribe to Sassari. Lucretia had insisted on seeing the Orcs more as a gag than anything, and she knew for a fact that their standing army was less than 80 fighters, and she doubted that their allegiance was even remotely necessary. What Lucretia didn't know was that the Orcs had a kill ratio of 1 to 150, and they specialized in guerrilla warfare and were quite industrious in their little stealth tactics. This contrasted lately with the general notion of Orcs as brutish, blunt-force fighters, and indeed they felt like that at some point or another, but adversity changes people. The Orc representative that arrived to Sassari was called Luba. He was quite a large, stout man with a Bowser face, protruding lower canine, small nose and eyes. His short raven hair had the texture of horse mane, and his skin was a dark, opaque green. He wore black armor with a black cape and hood, and his shoes were made of a special leather that did not produce any sound, even when he walked over creaking wood. And the silent nature of his gave the courtesans quite a start, and most of them did not notice his comings and goings. It almost seemed to them that he would apparate behind them. Lubert apparently enjoyed this one-sided hide-and-seek game, and he suddenly chuckled whenever he managed to startle someone, so he just like just appeared behind people. He was supposed to have seen Lucretia the moment he arrived, and conscious of his own personal words, Lubert had chosen to see her when he felt like it. And finally noticed Luba while swimming near the lake, and he sat down beside her on a stone bench. When she looked up from her needlework, she was startled at the large looming shadow sitting beside her. Luba occupied the space of two men, and he asked in a low, grunt voice, "What's the matter, my lady? You seem a bit upset." Franny narrowed her eyes while she studied Luba, and Melina had described their visitor in full detail. Franny sighed and said, "I haven't seen my lady in weeks, and without her I have become acutely aware of my own usefulness. Everyone has some big important job to do while I sit here and knit. Entire schemes are set into motion, and I wonder if my life has any worth." Chuckling, Luba said, "Is that it? Have you spoken to Melina about this?" "No," said Franny. "And what sort of big important job do you desire you would indulge me?" said Luba, laughing. Franny stood up and said, "Now you're just making fun of me." "No, really. I am genuinely curious to hear what you consider a job of great importance," said Luba, petting the place where Franny was just sitting. He did this to urge her to sit back down again. Sitting at the far end of the bench, she said, I could be a spy or a recruiter. I did the recruiting thing with Melina a couple of years ago and it was a lot of fun. And she never asked me to do the same for her again since then. I can't blame her, said Luba sarcastically, and he added, I saw you recruiting people in Scarabay and it gave me plenty to laugh about for more than a fortnight. Fanny rose from her seat and she left in a fury, and she had never met such an impudent man in her life. And Johnny Luba reclined in his seat, and he lazily watched the clouds pass by overhead. He pondered on whether he should see Lucrezia or not, and he was drawn to the sound of the metal clashing against a piece of wood, and standing up he made his way to the forest, and he found within Augustus slashing away abandoned trees. He saluted Augustus and asked, Need a sparring partner? Not really. Most people hate fighting against me since I take things overboard, said Augustus. And she added, Aren't you supposed to be seeing my sister? I'm not in the mood at the moment, and he added, You are a natural with a sword, and I could use a hand like yours in my army. You can't call an army of 80 swordsmen, said Augustus. With you, we will be 81, said Luba. Not interested, mister, said Augustus. A pity. I was hoping I'm going to know you a little better, said Luba, starting to leave, and he stopped and said, Not that your wishes matter much. Your Lady Melina is going to assign you and Gareth to my unit. What? Said Augustus, sheathing his sword. He was not aware of this turn of events. This fashion has surprised you, little Agustina, and considering how you and Gareth took out a third of your own army, and not the brightest move considering the impending war with Garagaton, and still I must recognize your fighting progress, said Luba mockingly. Melina made me do it, said Augustus in her defense. Sure she did, and he added before leaving. No human wants to march with you, and not that they were thrilled with you to begin with, but now they're afraid of you, and they think that you will put a sword to their back the moment that they lower their guard. Luban did not stick around to listen to Augustus' response, and he wandered around the Danes' pavilion addressing people in this fashion, and they were all having a bad impression of him. However, from an outsider's perspective, Luba had all the traits of a polite gentleman, and he eventually found the lady in the parlor reading a book alone, and based on all of the paintings he had seen all over the pavilion, Luba guessed that that lady was Imperia la Divina. And she still kept herself well, even though age was finally catching up with her, and she used plenty of powder and makeup to mask this fact. Luba rudely took her book and he flicked through the pages before asking, What are you reading? Nothing for the moment, said Imperia coolly. A pity, said Luba, returning her book to her, and he added, How is that daughter of yours working out? If it wasn't for Melina, Sassari would have become undone years ago, and all of her plotting and scheming always does more harm than good, said Imperia sadly. It isn't all bad, and I would not be sitting here with you if she wasn't so open-minded, said Luba. Imperia narrowed her eyes, and she said nothing, and Luba looked up and noticed a servant making signs at him, and he went to stand before her, and she looked a bit nervous since she was trying to avoid looking at him, and she said with a broken voice, I was sent here to guide you to Imperia's study. How come? Imperia is right over there, said Luba, pointing to the queen. Lucrezia is waiting for you, sir, insisted the servant. If she wishes to see me, then she must greet me first. The laws of common courtesy dictate that the host must welcome the guest to their home, and since I was invited here, she must play the part of hostess, said Luba. Please don't make my job any more difficult. Come along, begged the maid, walking in the direction of the study. She gave a sigh of relief when she saw Luba following after her from the corner of her eye, and after walking for half an hour, Luba arrived at Imperia's study with the maid. Lucrezia was naturally annoyed by his lateness, and she greeted him by saying, You are late. Am I really? I was not informed by anyone that I was supposed to see you at a specific time, date, and location, said Luba, sitting down on the couch. The couch groaned under the stress of his large frame. You were told that I wanted to see you the moment you arrived, said Lucrezia with his say. Yes, I know, and as per instruction, I came to see you the moment I arrived at the castle, said Luba, smiling. Lucrezia sighed when she realized again that her visitor was plain, and he was not the brute she had expected, though she found his cynicism extremely annoying. And then she said, Has Melina drafted a marching plan for you? It is in the works, though I am interested in taking Agustina under my wing. Her talent will not go to waste in my unit, said Luba. Fine, take her, said Lucrezia with disdain, and she added, It's possible, have her march ahead. It will help her self-esteem. Self-esteem? I never heard of such a terminology. Do you pick up that dribble from Melina? Asked Luba. Who cares? Now back to the matter at hand. And I think you should take Boris and Garrison well. They work well together, when he slew our men, said Lucrezia. Ludo felt there was a hint of anger in her voice, and Ludo narrowed his eyes and asked, "You do not think very highly of my men, do you? And our race is at the brink of annihilation while you fret about the possibility of losing your little gilded cage. And Impedia was a fool to choose you as your heir for the sole basis of being a woman, and your half-brother was a better candidate, and good day to you, madam, and I will see you in the battlefield. Oh, wait, I won't. Never once have you stepped foot in a barrack, and yet you dare try to lead us." Lucrezia maintained a stern face while her visitor insulted her, and she had heard very similar complaints from her general, her ladies in waiting, and even her mother, and even Melina herself. And the existence of her half-brother was news that greatly disconcerted her, and she has guessed that Melina knew his identity, and after seeking his truth, she guessed that her half-brother was possibly Gareth. He was a so-called orphan raised by her mother, and unlike all of the other lost children she picked up, this one always received special treatment. And she greatly wondered if they ever knew he could challenge her claim to the throne. Time, bro?
12 minutes.
The human allies despised the crews being brought by Melina, and they stood outside the north, and they wanted their kind to reclaim their rightful place as the rulers of the continent. And those that they considered non-humans gave Melina plenty to laugh at, and as things stood, the human allies decided to completely disassociate themselves with Melina's hirelings. And this included the non-humans and her mage companion. As a final gambit, Melina proposed that they do a little competition. Whoever could claim the capital first would be declared the sole ruler of the continent. Naturally, Lucrezia opposed this stupid idea, and she firmly believed that they should orchestrate a coordinated attack. And she tried her best to appease the situation, but they would not be dissuaded. And half a year passed, and the human armies did not march, and they were waiting to see if Melina's prophecy would come true. And just as Melina had predicted, the death of Bersame would take place in the month 11 of the year 1366. And this waiting comforted Lucrezia, and close to the end of summer, Bersame's army raided the tower of Suberus, and he had taken with him an army of 4,000. And according to the rumors, Bersame had lost more than half the men he had taken, and he took from the tower the head of the tower and his sole survivor. And it was a good thing that Baron and Cedric had been called back to Sassari before all hell broke loose. And in order to get on Bersame's good side, a few of the feudals started to hunt their magic user, and they hunted anyone who was perceived to have magical powers. Lord Sailor took matters into his own hand, and he issued a press release stating that Bersame wasn't cracking down on magic users, rather that the king was simply putting down a run-of-the-mill insurrection. Melina employed a good number of her resources to save the poor wizards from being burned at the stake, and it was during one of those incidents when a traveling merchant employed their first revenant. And revenants were a type of animated corpse or living ghost, and they only came back to life to fulfill a certain purpose, and naturally occurring revenants came back to life to seek revenge on their killers, and others who wandered the streets yelling the names of the people who would die in 3 days. And these merchant revenants were repurposed dead, and their bodies could only be animated for an hour, and they would then turn to dust, armor and all. And they could also be summoned once per day, and despite having such shorter running time, these revenants were 10 times stronger than the average living corpse, and they were also far more intelligent, and a few such undead warriors still had their sense of self, and even after rotting in the ground for a century or two, and they could also pass for regular humans in a pinch. And whenever a wizard was about to get burned at the stake, a revenant would come and save him. And such unlawful imprisonments were usually discontinued after the 5th or 7th revenant attack. And since they looked so human, these beings were not associated with necromancy. And the revenants also had enough common sense to turn to dust away from prying eyes. And the incidents of revenants caused the elders to worry, and they sent their lords to investigate their appearances. And the necromancer of these revenants was never anywhere near to be found. And also the identities of these revenants were unknown, and the elders feared that they had harvested for one Marcy grave, and to slay one they would have to unearth all of the corpses to perform a cleansing ritual. And since all of those mass graves were unmarked, it was impossible to know the origin point of those revenants. And they all had one commonality: they spoke a foreign tongue, and their races and genders vary, and they carry on their person at least one violet nemesia flower. Nemesia flowers smell like rotting corpses, and the Lord was said to have interrogated all of the wandering mentions about the new revenants. However, all of their investigations have been inconclusive. Time, bro?
8 minutes.
According to Franny, the lords had become most insubordinate thanks to Melina's constant interference, and there were rumors of infighting between the lords and the elders, and violence had not officially broken out since the figurehead known as Bersamet served as a deterrent against such civil war nonsense. And one day, for no apparent reason, Bersamet dropped off the face of the earth, and he was spending an undetermined amount of time cooped up in his castle, in his hidden tower in the back of the castle. And during the New Year's ball celebration, Lord Sailor arrived at Sassari, and the New Year was ushered in by an elegant ball. And this one was attended by dignitaries representing each of the allied nations, and Lord Sailor keenly noted that the dwarf and the giant representative, and the giant representative was a lad of 8 years of age, and the Mudra usually said that younglings, when dealing with other species, they did not do this as an insult, but more for convenience purposes. At the age of 8, the Mu was the average size of an adult human, and despite his young age, Ragu of the Mu was a rather mature, and his behavior was devoid of the childhood curiosity one associates with 8-year-olds. And Lord Sailor watched the lad for some time, and he had never seen a Mu before, and his blue skin and white hair were curious enough. However, it was his eye which caught most of his attention. The white of Ragu's eyes was black, and the round part was white. And after getting bored of gaping at Ragu, Lord Sailor continued surveying the guests, and he was looking for Melina, and he found her speaking with the dwarven ambassador, and the blonde dwarf was called Cremhild. And she had formerly belonged to the Veragenum court, and she had deserted when her husband was killed over a trivial matter, and at the time she was believed to be the head of the dwarven resistance. However, Melina had told Frederick that Cremhild was an army trainer, and she was still an important figurehead. But she smiled when she saw Lord Sailor, and Lord Sailor was not too happy about Melina's short hairstyle, and Melina whispered something to Cremhild, who nodded in response, and Melina then got up and she went towards the garden, followed by Lord Sailor. And once outside, Melina asked, "How's the divergence going?" It's progressing rather smoothly. It is a good thing that Stanley Guy is more concerned about canon deserting than about the instances of revenants, said Lord Sailor. They only had to put up with them for an hour, said Melina. Speaking of canon, have you any idea where he went? Asked Lord Sailor. He's with the elves in the Morenzi, and for our purposes, it's a good thing he left. Had he fought against us, his immortality would have neutralized the Elven army. And the Elven revival spells only work 16,200 times, and that is roughly 4 lives per Elven warrior. Explained Melina. That's a bit of an arbitrary number, don't you think, said Lord Sailor, frowning. It is just a rough estimate. Most of the Elven warriors think that the spell will revive them indefinitely, and their fearlessness in battle makes them take stupid risks that normal people would not dare try, and by removing the fear of death, they become quite the efficient killers. Or very easy corpses, depending on how the coin falls, said Melina. If we lords help you, can you guarantee that our families will be spared? Asked Lord Sailor. No, I cannot guarantee that the non-humans will not harm it, and they take to... I can only guarantee that the non-humans will not harm it. They take to oaths more sternly than humans, and in part this has to do with their occasional dealings with demons in order to survive. And as for the human allies, they plan to loot the capital, and those bastards are going to be marching first, so wait until the signal turn, explained Melina, and she added, and I predict that the elders will try to pull a big move, but like army civilians, so prepare for that eventuality. The others are not going to like this, said Lord Sailor, worried. It is not as if we need the Lord for anything, and we could easily take the capital with the elves and my soldiers, said Melina proudly. However, in this scenario, you and everyone you love is going to die. A time, bro?
5 minutes.
4 months passed after this conversation, and Lord Sailor was beginning to suspect that Bersamet was genuinely dead, and he had completely dropped off the face of the earth since New Year. And this rumor was further complemented by the worried faces painted on the elder's face. And during those 4 months, Lucrecia visited Verageddon with an armed escort for diplomatic mission, and with a stoic expression, she asked for funds and resources to build a public hospital in Sassari, and this petition was naturally denied. And Lord Sailor believed that Stanley Guy knew of Lucrecia's growing army, and he wasn't about to facilitate funds for her expedition. The pity was that Lucrecia indeed wanted a hospital in Sassari, and she knew that she would need a place to house the wounded after the battle was done. And around this time, the human allies began to move, and they were empowered by the perceived death of Bersamet, and he had been missing for 4 months, and thus he was assumed dead, and the others had done nothing to disprove such a rumor. And they were stuck in a pointless siege battle against the feudos in Edinburgh and Sigisora, and they were located at an important crossroads, and taking them would guarantee see a steady supply line, which would play an important role in taking over Veragherum. And a week into the siege, both armies were flanked by an army of 1,000 soldiers, and the human armies were a stout 20,000. And despite its strength in number, the army of Veragherum 1,000 soldiers easily overtook them. And in part, this problem had to do with the terrain, and both feudos were in lowlands and surrounded by a thick forest on either side, and this facilitated guerrilla warfare. Since Lucretia was knocking on loose into her 20,000 human allies, she dispatched Melina's entire army, and she was also curious to see how Melina's unseasoned army would act in the field. And when she gave the order, she was to see that Melina clad in armor, and Franny was just finishing putting on the clasp on Melina's chest plate. Lucretia said, "I was under the impression that you were simply a spy master, and that you used to stay in case something turns up, and there's no need for you to ride out with your men." "My army only obeys my orders, Lucretia, and just the same as your men has sworn fealty to you," said Melina. "That may be true, but you do not see most feudal lords riding out with their army," said Lucretia. Time, bro?
2 minutes, 30 seconds.
"And that is why they will lose. Just having the presence of your leader boosts morale out of your company, and I haven't the time to argue with you, and I must leave immediately if I am to save them," said Melina, storming out of her room. Franny followed behind the maiden clad in leather armor, and she had convinced Melina to let her act as her page boy, and Melina rode with her 687 army. And parallel to this cruise, Cedric was dispatched to a secret location with the other 500 recruits, and in total Melina had 1,200 soldiers on her command. And the second army was heralded by Basila, the frog princess, disguised as Melina. Then again, it was just as likely that Lucretia had spoken to Basila and not Melina. And as led, Lucretia had a hard time telling which one was which, and she had suspected that the one in Sassari was Basila. And this suspicion was due to the fact that Melina did not eat, but Basali ate ravenously. Oh, yeah.
2 minutes.
Alright, we'll finish it here. Bye-bye.